The first warning sign wasn't the whisper. It wasn't the rumor. It wasn't even the shaky phone recording that surfaced online for less than 6 minutes before it was mysteriously scrubbed from every major platform. No. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. The first warning sign was Meghan's face. You ever see someone smile because they have to, not because they want to? That tight, strange stretch of the mouth, that quick dart of the eyes. That twitch of the jaw trying to keep the world from noticing what's boiling underneath? That was Meghan. And this time, she wasn't hiding irritation. She wasn't hiding frustration. She was hiding fear. Real fear. Because right behind her, holding onto the edge of the SUV door on that icy California Thanksgiving week morning, was a child the world thought it knew, but didn't. And that child, the one the world has been told is 4 years old, looked up at the cameras with the awareness, the posture, and the unmistakable presence of someone older. Someone 6. Someone with a story she did not grow up inside the Sussex household to tell. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind to the moment the internet nearly exploded. The moment Doria Ragland, calm, collected, always unshakable Doria, allegedly revealed something so incendiary, so identity-shattering, that even people who normally dismissed royal drama sat upright and whispered, "Wait, what?" You're here because you felt that jolt too. Because deep down, you sensed that something about the Sussex narrative never added up. Because the timelines were off. Because the photographs were inconsistent. Because the children seemed to appear and disappear like puzzle pieces that never quite fit the frame they were being forced into. So let's walk straight into the storm. Right now, in this fictional exposé story, Meghan Markle is panicking. Not annoyed. Not irritated. Not bothered by tabloids. Panicking. Because the one person she never expected to speak, spoke. And the truth she allegedly released, whether by accident, pressure, or conscience, wasn't a small truth. It wasn't a detail. It wasn't a clarification. It was the kind of truth that flips a family tree upside down and sets fire to the roots. Doria's alleged admission? That Lilibet Diana is not who the world was told she is. Not 4 years old. Not born where, when, or how the public narrative claimed. And not biologically connected the way millions were led to believe. In this fictional storyline, Doria claims Lilibet is an orphan. A 6-year-old orphan. And here's the part that rattled even seasoned royal watchers in this fictional universe. She said it plainly. Not whispered. Not coded. Not hinted. Said it. Why? Why now? Why during Thanksgiving week? Why just before Meghan and Harry suddenly decided to be seen in public with their children again? Look, even if you don't follow the Sussex saga daily, your instincts probably tingled when that sudden, perfectly framed family outing hit social media. Why then? Why that day? Why that moment? Because in dramatic storytelling, timing isn't a coincidence. It's a message. The outing was rushed, and rushed outings always reveal more than they hide. Let's talk about what viewers saw. Harry stepping out first, shoulders tense, jaw locked, looking like a man who'd slept 3 hours in a week. Meghan exiting next, her smile sharp and brittle, the kind of smile held together by pure force of will. Archie climbing out confused, scanning the crowd as though searching for a face he expected to see but didn't. And then, Lilibet, the child who shouldn't have looked as old as she did, shouldn't have carried herself like that, shouldn't have moved with the hesitation of someone unfamiliar with the people guiding her. In this fictional exposé, Lilibet's eyes didn't widen in that instinctive mama recognition kids normally show. Instead, she looked at Meghan, the way a child looks at a person they've seen before but do not truly know. Like a teacher, or a visitor, or someone who shows up every few months and says, "Remember me?" That moment, that fraction of a second, tells the entire story. But let's slow down. Because the real storm began long before the outing. It began with a conversation. A private one. One Doria allegedly had in confidence. One that someone, somehow, caught pieces of on audio. One that should never have made its way into the hands of people who know how to analyze tone, pauses, and accidental slips in speech. But it did. And according to the fictional narrative we're building here, the recording revealed something chilling. Doria referring to the girl. Not Lily, not my granddaughter, not the baby. The girl. Words matter. Especially the words we choose when we think no one's listening. Doria allegedly explained details, timelines, gaps. And the moment she whispered, "She's 6, the room," and the internet went silent. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't fan speculation. This wasn't a YouTube comment deep dive. This was Doria, the woman who has remained unshakably silent for years. The woman who vanished from public view during key moments. The woman who has always appeared aligned with whatever Meghan wanted. If she spoke in this fictional story, it wasn't because she felt like it. It was because something pushed her to the limit. Which brings us back to the outing. Because Meghan wasn't simply putting on a smile. She was staging a presentation. A desperate one. Every angle felt intentional. Every gesture rehearsed. Every camera conveniently positioned. But there was one thing Meghan could not control. The child herself. Because children in stories like this don't follow scripts. They don't play roles perfectly. They don't say the right lines at the right time. They behave the way children behave, honestly. So when Lilibet stepped back from Meghan, even slightly, cameras noticed. Body language experts noticed. Viewers noticed. And the internet paused. Kids don't recoil from their mothers unless something feels unfamiliar. But let's zoom in even further. The moment that set the internet ablaze in this fictional story wasn't the step back. It wasn't the hesitation. It wasn't the confusion. It was the bracelet. A tiny band around Lilibet's wrist. Barely visible. Easy to miss. But not missed. Because someone online recognized the symbol etched onto it. A symbol tied to a specific orphanage program. Not a Canadian one. Not a British one. Not American. Central America. A region where adoption records often go missing. Where children sometimes change hands before they ever reach official paperwork. Where ages are approximated. Where identity becomes flexible. And suddenly, what Doria allegedly said didn't seem so impossible after all. But here's the twist. None of this was supposed to come out. Not the whispers. Not the outing. Not the bracelet. Not the timeline inconsistencies. Which leads to the real question. The question at the heart of this fictional expose. Why did Doria say anything? Family loyalty runs deep. But when loyalty and morality collide, when protecting someone means becoming complicit in something bigger, when silence begins to feel like betrayal rather than devotion, something breaks. And according to our fictional narrative, Doria reached that breaking point, which raises the stakes even higher. If Lilibet is 6, if Lilibet is an orphan, if the timeline is fabricated, then who knew? Who participated? Who helped maintain the illusion? Harry? Meghan? Doria? A handler? A network of people? Every answer leads to a deeper layer. But we're not done. Because the moment Meghan sensed that this truth might spill into the spotlight, she made one final, desperate decision. She rushed the Thanksgiving outing. The cameras, the kids, the sudden, happy family moment. None of it was spontaneous. It was a shield, a distraction, a last-minute attempt to drown out the flames before they reached the main fuse. But it didn't work. Because the flames weren't coming from the public. They were coming from inside the family. And what happened the moment Lilibet opened her mouth, just 3 words, sent Meghan into visible panic. And that is where everything in this story begins to unravel. Because those 3 little words, spoken softly, innocently, without understanding the tidal wave they were about to unleash, didn't match the script Meghan had been pushing for years. The cameras didn't catch the sentence. But the microphones did. And the people standing just a few feet away definitely heard it. Before we get to what Lilibet said, let's step back into the moment right before it happened. The air outside the Malibu market was crisp, a rare burst of chilly wind sweeping through the parking lot. People were bundled up in sweaters, sipping pumpkin spice lattes, taking quick photos of the display of Thanksgiving pies. No one expected to see Meghan and Harry that morning. No one expected to see the children either. That's what made the outing so strange. Usually, when the Sussexes stage a public appearance in this fictional universe, everything is perfect. Perfect timing, perfect angles, perfect lighting, perfect outfits. Everything planned. Everything curated. But this time, nothing was perfect. Nothing was polished. It was rushed. Too rushed. Harry exited the car first, not checking to see if the path was clear. He emerged with that heavy, exhausted look people get when they've been arguing all night. His hair was messy, his shirt slightly wrinkled, 2 details that would normally never slip through the cracks of a staged appearance. Meghan exited next, clutching the door frame a little too tightly. Her smile flickered, not a warm, glowing smile, but the kind that screams, "Don't lose it. Not here. Not now." Then came Archie, holding tightly onto a small, worn stuffed toy. Cameras zoomed in on that toy later, realizing it was one he hadn't been photographed with since he was a toddler. A comfort object, the kind kids pick up during moments of stress. And finally, Lilibet. She stepped down carefully, almost timidly, her eyes darting around the way a child scans unfamiliar surroundings. Her age didn't match the story. Her height didn't match. Even her speech patterns, what little slipped out, didn't match. But the most glaring inconsistency wasn't physical. It was emotional. Because children know their parents, they move toward them instinctively. That connection is automatic. Except here. Lilibet didn't move toward Meghan. She stood beside her, yes. But she didn't reach for her. Didn't cling to her leg. Didn't wrap her arms around her. She looked at Meghan the way a child looks at a caretaker they've spent time with, but not the way they look at a mother they see every morning. There's a difference. A difference anyone can feel. If they're paying attention. And trust me, the world was paying attention. But the real unraveling began when a woman at the market, someone who had no idea she was speaking into the range of a microphone, bent slightly, waved at Lilibet, and said, "Hi, sweetheart. Are you excited to spend Thanksgiving with Mommy?" It was an innocent question, a friendly one, the kind of small talk strangers make with kids. But Lilibet's response cut through the air like a blade. She shook her head gently and said, "She's not my mommy." 6 words. Soft. Unrehearsed. Unfiltered. 6 words that froze Meghan mid-motion. Harry immediately stepped forward, blocking the child from the microphones. Meghan's smile collapsed, then snapped back into place like a mask reattached with shaking hands. People close enough to hear went silent. One witness covered her mouth. Another turned to her friend with wide eyes. And Meghan did what people do when they realize the one thing they feared might escape has escaped. She panicked. Not subtly. Not gracefully. Not in the way celebrities usually panic when the paparazzi get too close. This was the panic of someone who just watched the truth slip into the open. She reached down quickly, placed her hand firmly on Lilibet's shoulder, and whispered something. A sharp, urgent whisper that didn't sound soothing at all. Harry wrapped his arm around Archie and began ushering him toward the store, but he kept glancing back at Meghan with a look that said more than words ever could. Not now. Not here. Not this. But the chaos wasn't over. Because the microphones didn't just pick up what Lilibet said. They picked up Meghan's whisper too. Not every word, but enough. Enough to hear the panic. Enough to hear the fear. Enough to hear Meghan hiss. "Don't say that outside." Not "don't say that. It's not true." Not "sweetheart, what do you mean?" Not "honey, don't worry." No. Don't say that outside. Outside. As in, the truth must remain inside. As in, someone might hear. As in, this is a secret, not a mistake. And in that moment, captured by one microphone, heard by dozens, replayed by thousands, the entire facade cracked. But remember, this is a fictional exposé story. Every character, every moment, every revelation is part of a dramatic narrative world that mirrors the style of royal scandal thrillers. So let's continue the story. Because the outing wasn't just a public relations gamble. It was a fire drill. Something had happened earlier that morning. Something urgent enough to force a last-minute, unplanned appearance. Something serious enough to make Meghan risk a situation she couldn't fully control. And that something leads us back to Doria. To the recording. The confession. The moment the steady, composed grandmother figure broke her own silence in a way that would set off a shockwave. Sources in the fictional narrative explain it like this. Doria didn't mean for it to leak. She was talking to someone she trusted. Someone who had grown increasingly concerned about the growing inconsistencies. Someone who asked direct questions. And someone who pressed too hard. The conversation turned heavy. The pauses grew longer. The tone shifted. Then Doria, overwhelmed by the weight of years of silence, reportedly said words she could never take back. She's not their child. That alone would have sparked a crisis. But she didn't stop there. Doria allegedly continued. She didn't come from them. She came to them. And then, the sentence that detonated everything. She's 6, not 4. Now think about that. In a world obsessed with timelines, dates, photos, announcements, a 2-year age gap isn't a mistake. It's a rewrite of identity, a rewrite of origin, a rewrite of truth. And once that recording slipped into the wrong hands, everything Meghan feared most began unfolding fast. Because if the child is older than claimed, if she comes from somewhere else, if she was brought into the family, if there are documents, witnesses, handlers behind the scenes, then the web becomes too tangled to maintain. Which explains the outing. Why Meghan insisted the children join. Why the appearance was sudden. Why Harry looked drained. Why Meghan kept glancing toward the parking lot exit as if expecting someone to appear. Because the moment that recording circulated, even privately, the narrative control she'd held on so tightly began slipping through her fingers. And she knew it. The outing was supposed to prove stability, to prove unity, to prove normalcy. But instead, it proved the opposite. Every camera caught it. Every viewer felt it. Every analyst saw it. Even strangers sensed the tension. This was not a normal family outing. This was a public performance collapsing in real time. And the moment Lilibet spoke, the illusion shattered. But the story doesn't stop there. Because what happened next, what Meghan did, what Harry whispered, what the children reacted to, would set off a chain reaction that no one, not even the most seasoned royal watchers in this fictional world, saw coming. And it all begins with the person Meghan least expected to confront her. Her own mother. Doria Ragland had always been the quiet shadow, the poised, gentle figure in the background of wedding photos, the silent support in charity walkthroughs, the elegant constant in Meghan's otherwise turbulent public life. But in this fictional expose, that image fractured the moment Doria decided she couldn't keep the secret anymore. Some say it was guilt. Others believe it was fear. Fear that the truth would emerge and she'd be blamed for hiding it. And a few claim it was love. Love for a child who didn't ask to be caught in this. Whatever her reason, it doesn't change what she allegedly said. She's 6. She's not theirs. She's not supposed to be seen. And when pressed further, when asked what she meant by not supposed to be seen, Doria allegedly explained that the child had already been placed before, that there was a previous arrangement, that the identity wasn't just misleading, it was borrowed. Borrowed. That word alone changes everything. It implies deliberate construction. It implies orchestration. It implies a child's identity may have been reassigned and repackaged for a global audience. Suddenly, the photos released to the public at carefully controlled intervals make more sense. The lack of live footage. The use of holiday cards instead of spontaneous candids. The public's growing suspicion that something didn't feel right. Now, it felt intentional. But the deeper shockwave wasn't about the child's age or name or even origin. It was about what this fictional revelation implied. That the image of a perfect Sussex family, a prince, an actress, their 2 children growing up free from royal restraints, might not just be a facade. It might be a complete fabrication. And if that's true, what else is? It's a domino effect, really. One truth collapsing leads to another, and then another, until everything once trusted becomes questionable. Which brings us back to Meghan's panic. In this story, Meghan isn't simply terrified of exposure. She's terrified of being cornered by a truth that refuses to stay hidden. Because Doria's alleged confession didn't just threaten the narrative. It threatened Meghan's control. Control over public image. Control over sympathy. Control over the brand. And make no mistake, in this fictional world, the Sussex family is a brand. A multi-million-dollar brand. Books, podcasts, documentaries, contracts, all built on a foundation of identity. A prince, his American wife, 2 beautiful children, born in freedom. A fairy tale reimagined. But if that foundation is compromised, if one child's entire backstory unravels, the consequences extend far beyond embarrassment. They threaten every dollar, every contract, every claim ever made. And that's why the outing was arranged so quickly. To reclaim the narrative. To shut down speculation. To remind the public. We're fine. We're whole. We're together. But actions speak louder than posed photos. And what the world saw was not unity. It was fracture. Harry walking a step too far ahead. Archie turning to glance behind him, unsure who to follow. Meghan looking toward her mother, who stood stiffly in the background, arms crossed, not smiling. And Lilibet, whispering those 6 unforgettable words. She's not my mommy. They say children don't lie. And even if they do, they don't fabricate something that's specific, not like that. So the question becomes, who told her that? Where did she hear it? And most importantly, why did she believe it? These are the questions that now burn across every fictional headline in this expose. Not out of cruelty, not out of scandal hunting, but out of concern. Because children deserve truth. They deserve safety. They deserve stability. And when one child's identity appears to have been rewritten for convenience or strategy, that concern becomes alarm. In the days following the outing, rumors in this fictional universe swirl like wildfire. A source close to the Sussexes claims Harry was blindsided by Doria's confession. Another insists he knew, but chose to protect Meghan's version of events. Some say Meghan and Doria haven't spoken since that week. Others whisper about a deeper fallout, one that includes legal consultations, international records being reviewed, and quiet inquiries being made by people far more powerful than PR agents. And as the fictional world watches, one question pulses louder than the rest. What else is hidden? Because if Lilibet's age was falsified, if her birth certificate doesn't align with known timelines, if her origins are tied to an orphanage halfway across the world, then someone knows. Someone signed something. Someone approved it. And someone will eventually speak. In this expose, the first domino is already down. Doria's alleged words, chilling in their simplicity, refuse to be forgotten. She's not their child. She didn't come from them. She's 6. And when added to Lilibet's whispered statement, she's not my mommy, the web only tightens. Because children, even fictional ones, don't get things like that wrong for long. Especially when truth is the one thing being hidden from them. Now the stage is set. Meghan's in damage control. Harry's torn between loyalty and conscience. Doria's role is changing from silent supporter to reluctant whistleblower. And the public? The public is watching, listening, waiting. Because what happens next in this fictional saga could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the most talked about family of the modern era. And what comes next changes everything. Because just when Meghan thought the worst was behind her, someone else steps forward. Someone who has the documents, the photos, and the notebook that could tear the entire story apart. She's not their child. That line didn't just echo through the room. It detonated like a grenade. And it came from the last person anyone expected to say something like that. Doria Ragland, the woman who once held Meghan's hand through media storms. The woman who kept her head down, her words measured, her appearances brief. The woman who, for years, was seen as the unshakable guardian of Meghan's chosen reality. She was not supposed to be the one to crack, but crack she did. And in this fictional expose tale, her confession wasn't pulled from her with threats or trickery. It came out quietly, naturally, in a moment when she forgot the world might still be listening. Let me take you to that moment. It was late. A private dinner in Los Angeles. No press, no paparazzi, just a close circle, people Doria trusted. Friends she'd known long before Meghan was a duchess, before Harry was even a name in her home. Someone at that table asked about the children. Simple, casual, curious. How's little Lily doing? It was meant to be polite. But Doria didn't smile. She blinked. She stared down at her wine glass. Then she said the line. She's not their child. It slipped out. Like a whisper she thought only she could hear. And when someone at the table gently prodded, "What do you mean?" She didn't take it back. She leaned in. And according to sources in this fictional story, she continued with a detail so raw, so specific, no one could mistake it for metaphor. She didn't come from them. She came to them. She was brought in, and she's 6, not 4. The room froze. And just like that, the fairy tale many believed, or at least pretended to, started to unravel. Now let's rewind. Because to understand the weight of this fictional confession, we have to understand Doria. She's been the silent shield. She never gave a major tell-all. She never cashed in. She never slipped up, not once. She was the contrast to Thomas Markle, Meghan's estranged father, who made a career out of spilling stories to tabloids. Doria stayed quiet. So why would she speak now? There are 2 theories in this fictional expose. Theory 1, guilt. Doria never wanted to go along with it in the first place. She thought it was temporary, a white lie for the cameras, a way to protect the child's identity. But as the years passed, and the lie grew, and the public attention mounted, the guilt grew louder than the silence. Because according to people close to her in this fictional narrative, Doria was haunted by something Meghan allegedly said one night, months after Lilibet's arrival. No one will ever know. That sentence rattled Doria. Not because it was said with malice, but because it was said with certainty. A line drawn in permanent ink. And Doria? She didn't see it that way. She believed children have a right to know who they are, and that pretending otherwise, especially for fame, fortune, or public image, is a dangerous game. Theory 2. Protection. The second theory is darker. It says Doria saw something behind the scenes, something about how the child was being raised, or moved, or spoken about. And it scared her. Not enough to go public, not enough to call the police, but enough to make her speak up at that dinner. Because, again, and this is key, she didn't think anyone was recording, but someone was. And while the full audio hasn't leaked in this fictional universe yet, insiders say the fragments that have made the rounds behind closed doors are enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Here's a summary of what was allegedly captured. Doria using the term orphanage, mentioning a private arrangement brokered overseas, referring to someone called the handler, a woman who coordinated the exchange, expressing doubt about how long Meghan could keep the act up, and finally, her saying, Harry doesn't know the whole story, and if he ever finds out, he's gone. That last line, it shook even the people who heard it secondhand. Because if Harry doesn't know, if Meghan orchestrated this identity without full disclosure to her husband, then this isn't just a family deception, it's betrayal. Now let's pause and ask a question the audience might be thinking. Why would Doria talk about this at all? That's where the emotional heart of the story comes in. According to this fictional plotline, Doria was breaking. Quietly, internally, privately, because the child, Lilibet, was growing up. And kids aren't props. They ask questions. They observe. They feel when something's off. And the older Lilibet got, the more dangerous the lie became. In private moments, Doria allegedly began to feel a growing sense of dread, not for herself, but for the girl. What happens when she realizes she doesn't look like the baby photos released to the press? What happens when her memories don't match the stories told to her? What happens when someone, a classmate, a curious adult, a stranger online, drops a truth bomb she's never been prepared to handle? In this fictional expose, Doria feared one thing above all, that the lie, once exposed, would shatter Lilibet's world, and Meghan wouldn't be able to contain it. So she talked, not to the press, not in a book, but in a conversation, among people she trusted. And that's what makes the fallout even more devastating. Because someone in that circle, someone Doria believed would protect her, didn't. They passed the information along. And now, the whisper is everywhere. Not on the covers of tabloids, yet. Not on primetime talk shows, but in texts, in emails, in royal chat forums, among investigators, among lawyers, and most of all, in Harry's ears. That's right. In this story, Harry hears about it. Not from Meghan, not from Doria, but from a third party, someone close to the source. And when he does, he doesn't get angry. He gets quiet. And then he makes a phone call. Not to Meghan, not to his brother, to someone else entirely. But that comes later. For now, let's stay with Doria. Because after the outing, the one where Lilibet whispered that haunting sentence, Doria went radio silent. No public appearances, no photos, no statements. Sources say she refused to return to Meghan's home, that she disconnected her phone for a week, that she canceled all planned visits for the holiday season. One insider even claimed she was seen at a private attorney's office in Pasadena, alone, looking pale, visibly shaken. If true, this suggests something bigger is coming. A legal move? A public statement? A tell-all to clear her name? Only time will tell. But what we do know in this fictional world is this. The confession happened. It spread. And it can't be taken back. Not now. Not ever. And as Meghan scrambles to hold the story together, Doria's words echo louder and louder. She's not their child. She's 6. She didn't come from them. And if those statements are true, or even partially based in reality in this fictional narrative, then the entire Sussex storyline is about to be rewritten. Because what Doria said wasn't just a slip of the tongue. It was the first domino. And the next one? The next one is already falling. Because the footage, the hidden footage, is out there. And when that clip surfaces, Even Meghan won't be able to spin what's coming. Shocking opening hook. Middle. Story builds moment by moment. It was supposed to be a simple family outing. Pumpkins. Camera flashes. Matching neutral-toned outfits. Hand-holding. Smiles. You've seen it before. The staged but supposed to look natural photos of celebrity families making surprise appearances in public just days before a major holiday. But this wasn't just any family. And this wasn't just any moment. Because this Thanksgiving week, the cameras didn't just capture cozy vibes and smiling faces. They caught something else. They caught the unraveling, and not just of a narrative, but of a carefully constructed identity. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at a photo and felt, instantly, that something was off? You couldn't quite put your finger on it. Maybe it was a stiff pose. Maybe it was someone looking in the wrong direction. Maybe it was the subtle body language, hands clenched a little too tightly, eyes darting too quickly, kids that looked distant. That was exactly the feeling that swept across the internet the moment the photos from the Sussex Thanksgiving outing went live. No one expected it. There had been no announcement, no press briefing, no hint of a return to public spotlight. And yet, there they were. Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, Archie Harrison, and Lilibet Diana, all four, together, visibly, in broad daylight, but not happily. Let's break down the moments that changed everything, frame by frame. The arrival. They pulled up in a matte black Range Rover with windows tinted like secrets. But when the door opened, the cold California wind caught Meghan's scarf and whipped it across her face, like something out of a Gothic film. She stepped out first. Her smile was brittle, forced. It was the kind of smile people use when they're desperately hoping no one asks a question they can't answer. She glanced over her shoulder, quickly, nervously. Not at Harry, but toward the second SUV that had pulled up behind them. People noticed. The cameras caught it. Then came Harry, tired, withdrawn, his jaw locked like someone trying not to say the thing burning in his throat. He didn't take Meghan's hand. He didn't look at her. Instead, he moved around the back of the vehicle, reached inside, and out came Archie. Archie was bundled in a red puffer jacket with a wool hat pulled over his ears. He looked sleepy, confused. Not the excited, bouncy toddler people remembered from Meghan's holiday cards. He held a toy, a small, well-worn dinosaur figurine. And then, finally, out came Lilibet. And that's when the energy shifted. Because this was no ordinary toddler. She wasn't carried. She wasn't cooing or pointing at leaves. She stepped out on her own, confidently, like a child used to navigating on her own 2 feet. Observers couldn't believe what they were seeing. She wasn't 4. She looked 6. And for a moment, the air stood still. People snapped photos. Not because she was adorable, though she was, but because something about her didn't match. She was too tall, too poised, too quiet. And she wasn't reaching for Meghan. She wasn't looking up with the wide-eyed wonder of a child excited to be in public with her parents. She was looking away, scanning, searching, waiting. That's when Meghan's hand reached down. Not gently, not naturally. She reached quickly, like someone trying to re-establish control, not affection. Lilibet didn't resist, but she didn't lean in either. It was like watching 2 people who barely knew each other trying to pretend they were close. It was awkward. And for a family that had carefully curated every public photo, every video clip, every filtered lens over the past 2 years, it was a disaster. The public's reaction. Within minutes, social media lit up. Why does Lilibet look so much older than she should? Anyone else feel like she's too tall for 4? Something about her body language is so weird. Is this even the same kid from the Christmas card? Thousands of comments. Dozens of TikToks analyzing the footage in slow motion. Body language experts breaking it down frame by frame. And then, the audio hit. Because someone close enough to the family that day had captured a brief exchange on their phone. A stranger, walking past, had leaned down and said something cheerful. "Happy Thanksgiving, little one. Are you having fun with mommy?" Lilibet looked up, paused, then said softly, "She's not my mommy." The world stopped. The video went viral in under 30 minutes before getting wiped off multiple platforms. But not before the moment had been recorded, re-uploaded, downloaded, and spread like wildfire. Was it taken out of context? Was it misunderstood? Maybe, but it didn't matter. Because that statement, 5 words, cracked the entire image. "She's not my mommy." And Meghan's face when she heard it? Stone. She didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She froze. Then, within seconds, she reached down and pulled Lilibet close, whispering something that didn't look like affection, more like a warning. Meghan was caught on camera, again, and this time, no amount of PR spin could reverse what people saw and felt. Harry's silence. Here's where things get darker. Harry didn't react. Not with surprise. Not with comfort. Not even with curiosity. He simply walked ahead. People around him, reporters, fans, strangers, said the same thing. He looked hollow. And in this fictional exposé tale, insiders say Harry had heard whispers before. But this was the first time he heard it from the child's own mouth. He didn't rush to correct her. He didn't reassure her. He didn't speak at all. Because when the truth hits you in public, with microphones all around you, and no plan to cover it, silence becomes your only weapon, or your only defense. The second SUV. Here's where things take a chilling turn. Remember that second vehicle? The one that followed behind them? It stayed parked. But someone stepped out briefly. A woman, mid-40s, sunglasses, clipboard. She didn't approach the family. She didn't speak. She stood by the car, arms folded, and watched. Only for a few minutes. Then, just as quickly, she stepped back in. Gone. No one recognized her. No one explained who she was. But some claimed she looked familiar. An adoption agency contact? A former nanny? A handler? No one could say for sure. But her presence, and her timing, added gasoline to a fire that was already raging. The bracelet. And then there was the bracelet. Yes, that bracelet. A tiny, pink beaded bracelet on Lilibet's wrist. Adorable, at first glance. But zoomed-in screenshots revealed something strange. An insignia. One used by a now-defunct orphanage organization based in Panama. That led online sleuths into a frenzy. Posts were made. Connections were drawn. Images from old institutional photos emerged. And in one of those photos, a girl who looked eerily similar to Lilibet. Not exact, but close. Too close. The age would match. The timing would match. The "she's 6" revelation from Doria would match. Suddenly, a simple family outing turned into a potential international mystery. And the Sussex team? Silent. No statement. No clarification. No correction. And as any media expert will tell you, silence is an answer. Doria's absence. One more detail, one that few noticed at first. Doria Ragland wasn't there. The grandmother who was so publicly present at the birth of Archie. The one who stood beside Meghan during the darkest media storms. The one who was always framed as the rock. Was nowhere to be seen. According to fictional insiders, Doria had refused to attend the outing. In fact, sources say she warned Meghan not to do it. That it would backfire. That Lilibet wasn't ready. And maybe, just maybe, that Meghan wasn't either. And she was right. Because this outing, this rushed, last-minute, image-saving public display, did exactly the opposite of what it was intended to do. It didn't silence the questions. It multiplied them. It didn't inspire confidence. It inspired suspicion. And now, the questions are louder than ever. Why did the child say what she said? Why did Meghan react with panic, not calm? Who was the woman near the second SUV? And most importantly, if Lilibet isn't 4, then who is she really? That answer may lie in footage no one expected to see again. Footage that, once leaked, would leave Meghan with nowhere left to hide. Because what's on that footage? Well, let's just say it will raise more than eyebrows. It may finally expose the truth behind the miracle birth. And it's coming next. It always starts the same way. A shaky hand. A phone angled just right. A moment that wasn't meant to be recorded, but was. And in this story, it was that exact kind of clip, short, grainy, unedited, that flipped the entire narrative on its head. You see, the moment Lilibet Diana stepped out of that SUV during the Thanksgiving outing, everything changed. But it wasn't just what she said that sent shockwaves through the media storm building around the Sussexes. It was what someone captured months earlier and forgot they had. Until now. Let's rewind. Back to a sunny day in Santa Barbara. Mid-August. A charity event at a private estate. One of those quiet, invitation-only gatherings where influencers mingle with philanthropists and camera crews are gently kept out of frame. No press. No tabloids. But phones. Phones are always watching. And that's what made this moment possible. Because on that warm afternoon, a staffer working behind the scenes, young, anonymous, no agenda, captured a clip. Just 11 seconds. But 11 seconds was all it took. At the time, it meant nothing. Just a child skipping across the grass, giggling. A woman, Meghan, standing off to the side, speaking to someone in a beige blazer. Harry, half visible, crouched near a table arranging food. And then, the girl. The little girl in a soft blue dress. Hair tied back, feet bare, running. But what stood out, even then, even in the clip's rawest form, was her voice. Clear, mature, articulate, not babbling. Not babyish. Her words were sharp, confident. Too advanced for what people expected of a 4-year-old. Because in that moment, the girl was heard saying something crystal clear. I used to sleep there before the loud man came. She pointed toward the main house. The staffer chuckled, thinking it was a cute comment, maybe referring to a parent snoring. They uploaded it to a private folder on their phone and forgot all about it. Until last week. Until the Thanksgiving photos surfaced. Until the body language analysts weighed in. Until the phrase, "she's not my mommy," went viral. And then it hit them. They remembered the voice. The child. The way she ran. Not like a 4-year-old, but like a child already used to freedom. They went back. They found the file. And when they watched it again, their stomach dropped. Because suddenly, it wasn't just an 11-second video of a child playing. It was a timestamp. A contradiction. A detail Meghan and Harry's public timeline couldn't explain away. Let's get technical. In the official narrative, Lilibet Diana was born in June 2021. In the footage, dated August 2022, the child is clearly more than a year old. But not just one. She's nearly 4 feet tall. She runs with full balance. She speaks in complete, grammatically complex sentences. She refers to events as before and after. She uses memory, not mimicry. That's the kind of developmental pattern you see in children over 5, not newly turned 3, not a toddler learning sentence structure. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was behavior caught on camera, and the timeline didn't match. At all. The voice analysis. Now let's take this further. After the clip began circulating in small circles, mostly private investigator networks and XPR analysts, it landed in the inbox of someone unexpected, a former forensic linguist. Yes, that's a real job. These are the people hired by law enforcement and intelligence agencies to analyze voice samples in criminal cases, ransom calls, even spy transmissions. And when this expert heard the child's voice, their conclusion was swift. Based on sentence structure, tone control, and articulation, this is not the voice of a 3-year-old. In fact, the expert estimated the child's age to be at least 5, possibly 6. Depending on exposure and emotional maturity. Boom. Confirmation. And that's when everything escalated. Because now, people weren't just guessing the timeline was false. They had footage. They had analysis. They had behavior markers. And all of it pointed to the same conclusion. Lilibet Diana, as presented to the world, may not be the age, or the child, the public was told she is. The background conversation. But the most damning part of the footage wasn't even the child. It was what Meghan said in the background. At minute 7 seconds. Just as the girl skips past the table, Meghan turns to the woman in the beige blazer and says, "Make sure no one posts anything with her. I don't want confusion about the age thing." That line, that one line, shattered everything. Because it proved that Meghan knew. She wasn't confused. She wasn't caught off guard. She was actively managing the illusion. Make sure no one posts anything with her. I don't want confusion about the age thing. Confusion? Or contradiction? And if this line was caught in such a casual moment, unguarded, unfiltered, what else had been said behind closed doors? What other details were being hidden? The PR team's emergency protocol. By the time this footage was dissected by every relevant media investigator in the fictional universe, the Sussex PR team was in full meltdown mode. Sources say an emergency Zoom was called. Code name, Mosaic. Why mosaic? Because the narrative was no longer a single image. It was a collection of broken fragments they were trying desperately to hold together. In this footage, it was the hammer that shattered their last piece of glass. In the call, Meghan reportedly demanded that all family content featuring Lilibet be wiped or disabled. No more spontaneous outings be approved. All staff sign reinforced NDAs. Doria be temporarily cut off from media access. But the damage was already done, because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Once footage circulates, once people see the cracks, no amount of spin can convince them the window was never broken. The royal palace reacts. Now, in any other situation, the royal family would have stayed silent. They've had decades of experience perfecting the art of no comment. But in this fictional story, the reaction came faster than expected and quieter than most people anticipated. According to a fictional source within the palace, they've been monitoring the situation very closely. It confirms internal concerns raised privately in 2022. That's it. One line. No names. No formal statement. But it was enough. Because it means this isn't a new suspicion. It's a known problem. And the palace? They've just been waiting. Waiting for proof. Waiting for exposure. Waiting for someone, like Doria, to break the wall. Now that she has, they're watching closely. And let's not forget, if Lilibet's age and identity are falsified in any way, it raises constitutional concerns about titles, succession, and representation. And that's no longer just a PR disaster. It's legal. It's historical. It's royal. What happens next? In the days after the footage began spreading through encrypted servers and invite-only back channels, Harry allegedly made a call. Not to Meghan, not to his father, not to his brother, to someone from the past. Someone who was involved in the earliest days of their parenthood. A former nanny. A woman no longer in service, but still holding secrets. And what she revealed. What she had locked away in one secure storage unit. That's what we explore next. Because in that unit was a box. And in that box was the one object Meghan begged her staff to destroy in 2021. They didn't. They kept it. And now, it's about to surface. And when it does, every lie will have a face. Every truth will have a voice. And the world will finally have an answer to the question everyone is asking. Who is Lilibet Diana, really? They say the devil's in the details. But in this case, the truth was in a bracelet. Tiny, pink, easy to miss. A simple circle of beads around a small wrist. And yet, that bracelet told a story louder than any headline, any press statement, any royal denial ever could. Because in this fictional exposé tale, the bracelet wasn't just a cute accessory. It was evidence. And it would lead investigators, and Harry himself, down a path that exposed a secret stretching across borders, timelines, and lives. Let's rewind. It started the moment paparazzi photos from the Thanksgiving outing hit the internet. Most people focused on the children's faces. Lilibet's posture. Archie's toy. Harry's tense body language. Meghan's frozen smile. But one corner of the internet, the digital detectives, the researchers, the timeline obsessives, zoomed in on something else. The bracelet. A dainty piece, barely visible beneath the cuff of Lilibet's sweater. At first glance, it seemed like nothing. A child's jewelry piece, probably from a boutique, or a gift from a relative. But something didn't sit right, because someone noticed a symbol. Etched into one of the beads was a tiny emblem, not a flower, not a heart, but a spiral sun. Simple, elegant, and hauntingly familiar, because that same symbol, the spiral sun, had appeared before. Not in royal circles, not in Sussex baby photos, but in the archives of a now-defunct children's shelter in Panama. The shelter, it was called Casa del Sol, House of the Sun. Founded in 2015, it catered to displaced children from across Central America, many of them victims of trafficking, abandonment, or war-zone instability. The symbol of the shelter? A hand-drawn spiral sun. It was stamped on documents, sewn onto pillowcases, and carved into beads that volunteers would craft into bracelets for each child admitted into the facility. Why? Because many of these children arrived with no names, no paperwork, no backstory. So the shelter marked them, not to dehumanize, but to give them something of their own, a symbol, a small identity, a belonging. And when those children were transferred, adopted, or moved, The bracelet went with them. It was never removed, never replaced, just passed on. Now let that sink in. Because Lilibet, the child the world was told was born in California, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, in June 2021, was photographed in November 2025 wearing a bracelet with the insignia of a Panamanian orphanage that shut down in early 2020. The timeline shatters. Do the math. If Casa del Sol shut down in early 2020, and if Lilibet was born in mid-2021, there's no overlap. None. Unless Lilibet wasn't born when they said she was. Unless she was already a child. Already wearing that bracelet, before her so-called birth. Unless Meghan and Harry didn't birth her, but received her. It sounds wild, right? But in this fictional expose world, that's exactly the theory that now consumes every investigation into the Sussex timeline. And the bracelet? That's the breadcrumb. Because a few days after the photos surfaced, a former Casa del Sol volunteer, let's call her Mara, came forward. She didn't go to the press. She went to a private investigator. Quietly, privately, nervously. And what she showed them? A photo album. Inside, dozens of kids. Group photos. Bracelets. Stories. And then, on page 14, a child. Female. Light-skinned. Wide-set blue eyes. About a year old. Wearing the same bracelet. And next to the photo? The name. Isabel. Mara told the investigator she remembered Isabel clearly. She was one of the last children transferred out before the shelter closed. The paperwork was vague. No adoption agency was listed. Only a code and a note. Special transfer, North American recipient. Mara said the child was quiet, observant, didn't cry much. She remembered one day in particular. A woman, clearly not a social worker, had arrived in a black vehicle with tinted windows. She met with the shelter's director, handed over a briefcase, left with the child. No paperwork filed, no photos taken. The director never spoke of it again. 2 weeks later, Casa del Sol shut down. Coincidence? Or cleanup? And here's where the story gets darker. Because when the investigator compared that old photo of Isabel to recent pictures of Lilibet Diana, it wasn't just a resemblance. It was a match. Same birthmark on the left shoulder. Same eye shape. Same uneven tooth coming in on the right. Same bracelet. Same child. Meghan's panic. Meanwhile, Meghan was spiraling. Not publicly, never publicly, but internally. Fictional insiders say she was furious. She demanded staff scrub the photos. She allegedly called 2 legal firms to explore image takedowns. She blocked several family members from calling. Because she knew. She knew what the bracelet meant. She knew someone, somewhere, would recognize it. She knew the story was cracking. And she couldn't stop it. Not this time. Because the bracelet wasn't something she could spin. It wasn't a statement she could deny. It wasn't a narrative she could reshape with a new documentary or podcast episode. It was tangible. It was time-stamped. It was real. And now? It was global. Harry's reaction. In the fictional storyline, Harry didn't speak for 3 days. Not even to Meghan. When the bracelet theory hit the private networks, he was reportedly devastated. Because, and here's the twist, he may not have known. He was told Lilibet was theirs. Biologically. Born via surrogate. Yes, but conceived from their own genes. That's what he believed. Until now. And when he saw the bracelet, he broke. Sources say he locked himself in his office for hours. Watched old videos. Reviewed timelines. Called old staff. Spoke with Doria, briefly. And then, he made one move that changed the game. He reached out to someone from Meghan's past. A person involved in the process. A name he had long been told to forget. The handler. Yes, she exists. And she's coming next. Because the bracelet led to Isabel. And Isabel's transfer wasn't just organized. It was sold. And the woman who arranged it? She has a notebook. One that holds every secret Meghan never wanted the world to see. Every payment. Every date. Every lie. And it's about to surface. They say the truth leaves a trail. Sometimes, that trail is digital. Sometimes, it's emotional. And sometimes, it's paper. Old. Faded. Filed away by someone who never expected anyone to go looking. But someone did. And what they found in the orphanage archives wasn't just incriminating. It was devastating. This is the part of our fictional expose where the cover story unravels page by page. It started with a name, Isabel S. Age, unknown. Origin, unconfirmed. Transferred, January 2020. Status, special handling, confidential recipient, U.S. national. Sound familiar? Let's rewind. After the photos of Lilibet wearing the mysterious bracelet surfaced and were connected to Casa del Sol, pressure mounted behind the scenes. Investigators working outside official channels. Journalists, former NGO coordinators, legal consultants, began retracing the digital footprint of children transferred out of Central America in early 2020. Their first challenge? Casa del Sol had been shut down under suspicious circumstances. The second? All digital records were wiped. Wiped completely. But that's the thing about people who work with children. Some of them care. A lot. And one of them, a former assistant director of Casa del Sol, we'll call him Mateo, had kept backups. Not online. Not in a drive. In a locked metal cabinet. Inside his mother's home. In a village over 100 miles from the orphanage's original site. Inside that cabinet were boxes, labeled, color-coded, dated. And inside one box the folder, marked Isabel S. Top right corner labeled VIP exit, urgent. Inside, everything. The file. A black and white photograph of the child. She couldn't have been more than 18 months old. Same eyes. Same soft dimple on her right cheek. The first line of her intake form read, child brought by third-party aid worker. Found at roadside checkpoint, abandoned. Then came a handwritten note in red ink. No prior records. No birth certificate. Assign estimated DOB, April 2019. Pause right there. April 2019. That would make her 6 years old in April 2025. So why, then, was Lilibet Diana, the same girl, presented to the world as being born in June 2021? That's a 2-year discrepancy. That's not just a mistake. That's fabrication. Now back to the file. Under Transfer Approval. Request initiated December 2019, expedited under private contract. No adoption agency listed. No legal guardian recorded. Instead, the box was filled in with one name. JMA, handler assigned, stateside clearance approved. GMA, a name that kept resurfacing. It matched the initials on shipping manifests. It matched the email tag on encrypted communications sent to Panama's border registry system. And, according to this fictional timeline, it matched a name Harry had just uncovered. But we're not there yet. Let's keep going. Inside the envelope were scans of payment receipts. 3 in total. One for $35,000, labeled Initial Coordination. One for $18,000, labeled Transport and Identity Reconstruction. One for $7,200, labeled Medical Recertification. These weren't donations. They weren't grants. They were private wire transfers from a U.S.-based LLC. Guess the name? M&H Ventures. Filed in Delaware. Created 6 weeks before the transfer. Shut down 6 weeks after. A ghost company. A shell. A funnel. Set up. Used. Erased. Sound familiar? This fictional exposé is no longer about parenting. It's about paperwork. About money. About rewriting a child's origin. The photographs. Tucked at the bottom of the folder were 5 photographs. The first 3 were of the child, Isabel, playing outside with other kids. The 4th was of a woman holding her. But this wasn't Meghan. Or Doria. Or anyone from the royal circle. She was wearing sunglasses. A beige blazer. And on her wrist? The same bracelet Meghan wore in 2018 at a United Nations event. Coincidence? Not in this story. Because the 5th photo showed the woman, same blazer, handing Isabel off to a man wearing a baseball cap and holding a leather satchel. His face isn't visible, but the car behind him was a black SUV, California license plate, rental company traceable to Santa Barbara. That SUV appeared again, in the background of Meghan's infamous 2021 Oprah interview. Same bumper scratch, same license plate. You see what this means? This isn't speculation anymore. This is documentation. This is physical proof. The real birth certificate? There was one final page. Folded. Creased. Smudged. A draft certificate. Birth record application, Los Angeles County. Child, Isabel Solana. Date of birth, estimated April 15th, 2019. Mother, unknown. Father, unknown. Guardian, blank. In the top right corner, a stamp. Incomplete / pending U.S. entry approval. Yet somehow, Within 8 months, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor was announced to the world. Born in California. To Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. June 2021. Same child. Different name. New identity. The emotional toll. Fictional insiders say that when these files were shown to Harry, he didn't speak. He paced. He stared. He ran his hands over the photographs. And then, he broke down. Because this wasn't a conspiracy blog post. It wasn't a social media theory. It was real. Paper, ink, fingerprints, dates. And for the first time, he realized what had been done. Not just to him, but to her. To the girl he thought was his daughter. Because in this fictional universe, Meghan told him everything had been legal. Everything had been arranged above board. Everything was fine. She told him surrogacy. She told him privacy. She told him protection. But she didn't tell him Panama. She didn't tell him Isabel. She didn't tell him about the handler. And now, he wanted answers. He wanted names. He wanted the notebook. Because somewhere out there, tucked in a storage unit, or a closet, or a safety deposit box, was the missing piece. The ledger. The record. The map that traced every lie, every dollar, every transfer. The notebook kept by JMA. And when Harry finds it, so will we. Because the handler? She never left. And her time in the shadows is running out.